I think there's no. They are vulnerable because I think that people of our parents' generation and before them, I think they had first they had much more housework and much more
Right.
everything to be made from scratch.
Right.
Problems of actually just survival and
Right.
maintaining the house and the home and things.
Right.
So I think that there were much fewer questions and therefore it was much more practical.
Mhm.
And as a result, when you wanted advice
Mhm.
for behavior, for how to help children to behave, you went to people whom you trusted who were older.
Right.
Now the generation of parents have read,
Mhm.
they are well educated, they
Mhm.
have access to information,
Right.
and they are sort of trapped in that
Right.
information because they don't really totally trust
Right.
the previous generation either because they feel times have changed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
And
understand what you're
so
saying.
they don't lean on the advice of a
Right.
mother-in-law to say, this is what you must give your child either for health
Mhm.
or for behavior, education,
Mhm.
raising your children. So they search a lot more, and the
Right.
search has become more and more superficial.
Right.
So until you have a plan,
Mhm.
you can't get answers from outside. I
Right.
think.
Right.
So I think it's complicated and very vulnerable, and so they look to school teachers,
Mhm.
and school teachers are not fully equipped for that.
Right.
We are not. I mean, they are only equipped up to a certain point to give advice about. People want to know what to tell their child, for instance, about death.
Mhm.
My neighbor died. What shall I tell my child?
Mhm.
That's not something a school teacher, unless she has a lot of life experience.
Right.
That old grandmotherly person.
Right. Right.
It's not a person who can easily give you an answer to that.
Right. I understand. I understand. And that.
And people and parents didn't go for answers like that
Mhm.
to teachers
Right.
in generations past.
Correct. I understand what you're saying. Right. So the kind of the search that you're saying, the superficial search, uh, people end up desperate, right? Like they just for everything they'll have 10 pros and 10 cons, but at the end you need to make a value judgment, and that judgment can either comes through experience or through expertise, right? And when you don't have that, you can just keep adding it up and adding it up, and
Yeah.
many parents do, they do feel lost, and genuinely not because of their own reason. It's just happened that way.
Yeah.
I would like to start with the basic question that almost all parents have, which is what is the difference? And I know that they do see the difference practically when they reach the classroom, but for parents who don't go to the classroom and see, what would be the differences between Montessori and a traditional sort of setup?
It's a very good question. What is a Montessori class? It's wonderful to think about a class because a Montessori class I would describe as a community.
Mm-hmm.
A Montessori classroom is not. It takes as its model the home.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a environment that is set up for the child away from the home,
Mm-hmm.
but which is modeled on the home.
Okay.
So the most important thing I think that particularly for the children of who are very young,
Mm-hmm.
that Montessori's work was really to talk about how to create an environment to suit the needs of children.
Okay.
So you will always see when you enter a Montessori class a mixed age community of children, which is I
Right.
would say the most striking difference between a regular classroom and a Montessori
Right.
classroom.
Right.
An environment in which children, if they are of the youngest age group, they would be between 2.5 and 6 years old,
Mm-hmm.
but they would all not learn together so much as live together.
Right. Right.
So they live together in this environment, and they have different needs.
Mhm.
They are of different personalities. They come from different backgrounds. They have different abilities,
Mhm.
and they share the space,
Right.
which is both physical
Right.
and spiritual, and mostly social.
Right. Right.
So the thread of the Montessori class, what it's based on, the
Mhm.
core principle that it's calibrated on,
Right.
is the idea of social engagement.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
how can the child has come from a home
Right.
into the school, and in the home, the child is the center of the family's universe.
Right.
Yes, so the child needs to grow in that environment where the physical and spiritual needs of the child are completely met by the family. So the children work very independently. So there's no teacher-led classroom. You were asking about the difference.
Right.
There's no blackboard, of course. There's no teacher teaching the children. The teacher is an observer.
Right.
Montessori saw the teacher as an observer of natural human behavior.
Right.
So this is an environment that's created where the children can meet their needs, choose to fulfill their needs, and be guided and helped, supported, but only really observed. Observe, their development is plotted and observed.
Right.
That I would say is the main difference.
Got it. To start off there, in the sense of the openness of teaching and learning, right? Guiding rather than direct teaching. How would you see the differences in sort of the skill set or of like math, English, and some of the basic skill set? How do you see development? Like there is a sense of natural evolution of that coming out of the child through play, but let's say the child is completely avoiding math altogether. How do you see that? How does that develop?
Let's begin with the word that you use, the word play. For children, play and work are not something that we differentiate. Montessori believed that the human being from the moment of birth is born to work.
Okay.
And born to engage and that first plane, the developmental goals of the child, which nature pushes him towards, is really to become a master of himself through contact with the environment. So math, English, birds, animals, anything, languages, hatred, anger, whatever is in the environment, that child will take in and become a part of that.
Right.
That is given to the child only in the very early years. We lose that ability to take in without reasoning, without questioning, without asking, without even realizing, unconsciously taken from the environment. We lose that ability by the time we are 5.5 or 6 years old.
Right.
But everything that we take forward into life is actually from the seeds of what we get at that time. So math, language, these are all not forced upon the child.
Right.
But it brings us to the next most important principle of Montessori education, which is choice. So you offer the children from the very beginning the ability to choose. And that possibility of being able to choose is what helps the children to control impulse and make choices which are based on more than just, I want this, now I don't want this, I want this, I don't want this.
Right.
Once you choose, the guidance of the teacher is once you can choose anything you like, but once you choose it, you have to persevere and finish.
Got it.
So perseverance and finishing and seeing something through helps the children to understand what choice actually is. Once you choose, all the other possibilities shut.
Okay.
That is the meaning of choice. Choice is commitment.
Okay. Got it.
So, therefore, the children gradually, not obviously overnight, and some children take different lengths of time to come to an arrival at that. If the environment is not, there is no punishment of any kind in a Montessori class.
Right.
We don't punish.
Right.
And there is no reward either. Work is its own joy. It's its own reward.
Right.
And so the children's choices, when the choices are appropriate, they give the child that inner joy. Right. And you will find that nature guides the child to challenge himself. No child, I suppose it's true for all of us in one sense, but you see it so deeply in children. For all of us, if there is something, you take a video game. If you've moved on to level 2, you would never do level 1.
Right.
So the interest will wane.
Right.
So challenge is something children naturally look for. And out of lack of knowledge, out of out of love and anxiety, actually, we prevent children from making errors.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want them to make a mistake at all.
Right.
So if a child, so everything that the child is naturally drawn to, which is a challenge for the child, adults in the child's world, out of love, out of affection, out of protection, prevent them from
it.
that
Right.
challenge. If you want to take language particularly, language is seen as nature. If you think about human
Mhm.
evolution, spoken language came way before written.
Right.
And
Right.
so if you look at the Montessori classroom too,
Mm-hmm.
it is on spoken language that everything is based.
Mm-hmm.
Oral language is the base of education. We don't ask, our children don't naturally
Mhm.
come into writing till they are about 4.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's not as if there's no preparation. The preparation is all oral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a preparation of the hand.
Mm-hmm.
So the children are also helped by, many activities. If you're washing dishes,
Right.
or if you're cutting vegetables, or if you're, mopping, you're wringing a
Right.
mop, then the work of your hands
Mm-hmm.
allows you to coordinate your body, allows your body to come under the control of the mind.
Got it.
So that will naturally help the child when the days come to write.
Mm-hmm. Got
So
it.
the preparation of the child for language or for mathematics
Right.
is based on life experience upon which language and math are based.
Got it.
So if you take mathematics, what is mathematics? It's the extraction of abstract numerical concepts from life experience.
Right.
So let's say sorting out vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are coming for lunch? How much rice to make? These are the mathematical problems of daily living out of which
Right.
math was born. So if you
Right.
go into mathematics, which is abstract,
Mm-hmm.
without offering the child opportunity to live,
Mm-hmm.
preventing him from the engagement in daily life,
Right.
then that mathematics and language will sit on something that is not solid.
Right. Got it.
So the first levels of experience that we offer children, particularly when they're very young at 2.5,
Mm-hmm.
is to offer them that opportunity to become part of the community by serving the community. So
Got
we
it.
prepare, the children prepare the snack, they prepare the environment is, you care for the environment with them. Our children mop and sweep and, the everything in the environment that needs to be done
Right.
is done with the children,
Right.
by the children.
Right.
So it's it's an environment which builds the child's experience and therefore his confidence.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So there I kind of wanted to get into the aspect of learning through interactions, right? So in a school, in a traditional school environment, the interaction is only between the student and the teacher, and there is a certain hierarchy in that interaction. The teacher offers the knowledge, and the student has to receive the knowledge. Now, in the Montessori environment, it is the interaction between between the objects of the environment, guided by the teachers, and which comes within from the child. But
It's a very, very, very good question. And it's a very powerful question also.
no, but my question is, what happens to the interaction between children? Is, let's say another child is building something or drawing something. Do the sort of interaction between children happen? Do they go and talk to each other and see what you're playing? Should I play this and things like that? So I wanted to understand that a bit.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something that's quite central also. It's a triangular relationship, that it's the objects in the environment, the materials which are set out, which are appropriate to the child's developmental needs,
Mm-hmm.
the child's interaction with them,
Mhm.
and the teacher's ability to put the child in touch with the environment. So this
Right.
is the triangular relationship between the environment, the child, and the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But the community in which the children grow is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But that the older children naturally
Mm-hmm.
come to the support of the younger child and can often give the child just that enough help
Mm-hmm.
that they go to the older child trustingly. They use the older child as the model of their world,
Mm-hmm.
and the older children are sometimes the greatest companions and assistants, if you like, of the teacher. That community belongs to them. That environment belongs to them. So they share it very openly with a lot of ownership with everyone who enters that community. So there is a lot of teaching between children. There's a lot of peer learning. But that peer learning is not necessarily interaction one-on-one.
Okay.
I've worked with children who are 4 or 5 years old and started doing something with them. And without any sort of demonstration, they take it over.
Right.
They've seen it for 2 years done in the environment around them. You know, in the old days when we used to play with cousins, I don't even know if young children now have a lot of cousins to run around with. Maybe in the buildings where there are lots of children downstairs, they have that opportunity. But you don't know how you knew it, but you now have it.
Right. Now, this is more of an issue on the other side rather on Montessori, but when they do transition from a Montessori school to a regular school, the existence of the overarching structure of, just the timing, where you sit, what you do, when you do it, all that, it kind of overwhelms the children. So how do you look at this transition into the generic school system?
And I wish I had a rupee for every time I've answered that question. As you can imagine, I've answered that question a lot. It's a very good question. How do children who have been to a Montessori environment, how do they relate to the world outside? How do they relate to another school educational system? This is a very good question. What is it that we want our children to have when they leave us? And my answer to this is always that what we want them to have is good character.
Right.
An ability, a mind that can think. An ability to assess what is on the ground and be able to deliver what they think is important.
Right.
You'll find that I think that my experience of the children who've left Montessori has been that they have a lot of confidence. They have confidence in a new situation.
Right.
They have a kind of a social empathy. So they have social skills. They are able to go in and see what people need.
Right.
A Montessori teacher used to tell a very moving story of a child who went to a very regular school, and that principal of that school scolded this child for not going to assembly and staying in class. And so she said, "No, I am going to assembly, but I was waiting to shut the doors so that as soon as the last person leaves, I'll shut the door and go."
Got it.
So the principal said, except me, no one in that school had ever thought about the classroom. The children just did what they were told.
Right.
It was a child responding to something much wider for the whole school. So the children grow with that sense of character, really.
Right.
They have if they have been supported well from the beginning, then they develop this sense of strength and of character. But also, I think that because their experience is practically based, their concepts often are sound, strong.
Right.
Math, language, these are strong concepts. They don't write what they are told to write.
Right.
They can write on their own. They can think. So the question is really that the goal and aim of a Montessori class is not to prepare them for regular school.
Correct.
It is to prepare them for life.
Correct.
And so everything that prepares them for life will prepare them for new situations. And so therefore, I would say that they often ask me, it's a competitive world. The Montessori environment is completely a utopia. Where everyone is, equal needs are met, or children of all ages and all backgrounds are together. This doesn't happen in the world. It's a competitive world. So my answer has always been that, yes, if you think that your child will starve from the time he's 6 years old, then what is the preparation you're going to give to that 6-year-old who will starve? Give him an excellent nutritive diet from the time he's born to withstand that. Or do you want to start starving him when he's 2.5 in order to be ready for starvation at 6? That makes no sense.
Do you also have parents who come out and say, this works really well for me. My child is learning. Would it be possible for him to continue in this system till he sort of like goes into college or whatnot? Because it works for him, and I don't want him to get into a structured rut. Do you have that
Yes.
kind of queries as well?
We do have those kinds of parents. From the very beginning, we've had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the 6 to 12 Montessori, the age group 6 to age group 12, that kind of education came into India because of that sort of demand.
Got it.
We now have 6 to 12 training for the Montessori teachers who can be trained for that age group.
Okay.
Obviously, there is a lot more academic depth in that, because you're really dealing with what would be 6 to 9 year olds in one class and 9 to 12 year olds in one class.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also with vertical grouping,
Got it.
because Montessori is based in community, and by
Right.
that age they really need their peers.
Right.
They really want to work with other children, and so the teacher there really becomes a guide and there I think the focus there is not so much content of curriculum, but how to do research and how to pursue your interests and how to find out the things that you're interested in within a framework.
Got it. Got it.
Children actually get a sense of their world, the world in which they live, through stories.
Right.
So their first contact with the world itself, in a sense, is through their life experience. So when their life experience is reflected in the story, then that gives them a way to engage with the world and to build this capacity to hold things in the abstract, to understand that you can also imagine, that so the closeness between reality and the imagination is very important in the earliest years of life, because they don't have that much life experience.
Right.
That age group, the 2.5 to 6 year olds, it's not it. They are very literal, so it's a very difficult age to. All stereotypes are problematic, because you have to reflect the child's world in those stories. So we have to be really careful about fairy tales. We have to be really careful about things that the children will feel are unable to hold in the abstract. But that's only in the very young, for the very young children. By the time the children are about 4, you see that the child's understanding and abstraction and imagination are at a different level.
Right.
So they have built on their experience, and they can catapult that into a wider experience of things that they haven't experienced. They still can imagine.
So basically, can we look at it this way? Like, if we teach a child too young that the story of Red Riding Hood, they might think these wolves are just evil, right? Instead of just the natural
and
way of
also,
things.
it creates fears. It creates. They're very literal about their stories. So you can always gauge by the child, and the child will always guide you, because you see what they want. They ask you to tell the same story over and over and over again with the same level of detail.
Right.
You leave out the detail, the children will remember and remind you.
Right.
That repetition reinforces a real experience. So the favorite stories for young children are: I woke up in the morning. The little boy, he covered himself and he wouldn't wake up, and his mother kept calling him to drink milk, but he said no. So for that child, you can see yourself in that story, which is very essential in the beginning.
Right.
But that's only in the beginning. So those stories must be affirmative. It must have positive experiences. The stories must affirm the child's world. Give him a confidence of the world. Know how to deal in the world.
Got it.
And by the time they are 4, they love stories about social life and social breaking of rules.
Right.
He dropped all his food, and they can get that very simple humor. Not word-based humor, but simple action humor.
Right.
And so those children are much more capable of imagining. But by the time they are 6, Montessori says that the child's power of the imagination has grown. That is the power that the child is going to use from now on.
Right.
So it was constructed in this very first 6 years, but now it's a very powerful force. So this child he can not only have stories about mythology, about fairy tales, about the grand stories of living. You take a story like the Mahabharata, for instance. Should I kill my grandfather in a battlefield? This is not a question you'd ask a 2.5-year-old for whom the grandfather is right there in the room.
Right.
But if you're talking to a 7-year-old, is it right? Is it wrong? What are those reasons? These grand questions for which there are no answers.
Right.
Is Montessori affordable and is it available to everyone? It is my sorrow that at the moment it's not. The reality is that there are very few Montessori schools, and if you talk to any Montessori school, they are swimming against the current. They are struggling struggling to be relevant, struggling to be reach a larger number of children.
Thank you, Rukmini. A pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.